Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Breaking the Game show here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. I'm Stephen Gillespie, and joining me is Austin Carr. Austin, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, Steven. It's another nice Sunday. The weather's been really pretty where I am, so it's been a great day. How are you doing?
Weather not so pretty. I like the rain though. The rain doesn't bother me. It's been raining all day. Got March Madness on the TV all day long, and running after the youngins all day. So it's been a fun day. Fun day.
I had a little bit of a rough time with my bracket. I don't know how you're doing, but mine's busted for sure.
I mean, if the Razorbacks keep doing what they're doing, then I'm going to be sitting pretty. I didn't have Texas too far today. West Virginia was a little bit of a letdown to me. Syracuse completely destroyed some of my side. But anyway, we'll talk about all that another time. We have a great show lined up for you guys today. We have the guys from Draft Deeper on, and we're going to talk about how they got to be where they are. We're going to talk about the hits and the misses that they've had from the last draft and kind of who to keep an eye on for this draft. But before we do, just want to remind everybody that support for Breaking the Game is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. We have an exclusive offer for our listeners, 20% off plus free shipping with code BTG at manscaped.com. Please go check that out. Use promo code BTG to let them know that you came from us. Austin, are you ready to introduce our special guest that we have lined up?
Yeah, man. Today? Let's go ahead and do it. I'm excited to get going.
All right. So the guys from Draft Deeper are joining us today. We have Nate and we have Cole. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing?
Great.
Loving life, man. We got the NCAA tournament going literally as we're recording this, so it couldn't be any better, right?
There you go. Cole, how about you, man? How's your bracket holding up?
It's shattered, but that's okay. It gets shattered pretty quickly every year. So
mine
more
too.
about enjoying the games and enjoying the excitement on the kids' faces as they get to live out their dream.
There you go. And we're draft experts, right? We're not bracket experts. So,
exactly.
kind of segregate that off to the side a little bit, and we'll get into what we're really good at talking. At least you guys, Austin and I, were learning. We're kind of gleaning off of your guys' expertise and others from around draft Twitter that we've gotten the pleasure to know over the past couple of seasons. And we just want to talk to you guys real quick about kind of y'all's origin story, like what you're kind of growing into your fanhood, what made you guys want to really study the draft and how players translate over to the professional level, things like that. So, Austin, you ready to get this interview going?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'm excited. Let's see what they have to say.
All right, so we'll kind of pick off of each one of you guys as we go. So we'll start with Nate. Nate, can you explain to us a little bit about how you developed your love for the game of basketball and what was your influence to really kind of get into the draft process in particular?
Sure. So I'll start off by kind of describing a little bit about where I came from, and that'll kind of put me on track to get to how I met Cole and how him and I got into a lot of this together. But going back to high school was really like when I started watching the game of basketball more closely and focusing in on college basketball, and then really starting to get a grasp on who's going to be going into the draft and a lot of the young players that were going to make their way into the NBA. So that's what led me to getting into like journalism class in high school, want to write about basketball, kind of do that for a living. Went to Temple University to study journalism.
Okay.
Yeah, wanted to be a basketball writer, but as I started doing more things for different outlets, I wrote for Rant Sports like really far back in the day, did a lot of stuff for Fansided, to some other outlets, and I did the writing thing, but in studying the game more, I realized that I wanted to be in the game. So really late into my college career, I was like, why don't I try to go into a front office, be a scout, do that whole thing, analyzing the game, looking at it from a different perspective versus the hot take media side of things. I didn't realize at that time that you can do media different ways versus just yelling at a camera like Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith. But
a lot of people don't realize that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Around that time, it was more people shouting at each other and not being very friendly to each other when they're discussing their takes.
Yes, sir. So I pursued different avenues, working in and taking different classes in basketball evaluation and scouting and different media work in terms of like the video clients that every team uses. I went out to pro scout school in Vegas for a few years, did that whole thing. And it was hard to try to find a job, right? I mean, there's only 30 NBA teams. There's only so many jobs within front offices, and there's only so many top college programs taking in clients and different workers that are outside of their general like manager base. Like, yeah, you're a manager in college. That's a nice foot in the door to, being like a video coordinator with the team or something like that. So in trying to make that move in my career later, I missed out on some early opportunities, but at the same time, I was able to learn, get to know people, and still do what I can on the side while working your everyday job and just trying to make a living, right? Kind of doing two things at once. Well, that led me to Alon Vinokurov, who is now a scout with the Los Angeles Lakers. He actually had his own operation, his own private scouting firm for years, running what was called EV Hoops at the time. Okay. And Cole was working there before I was. So Cole was kind of like on his way out to do other things, and I was kind of like coming right in. So when we caught each other at like the tail end of his time there and the start of my time there, we developed a friendship, and we loved just talking about basketball in general, breaking down prospects on the side, and that led us to be able to reconnect a few years later, and that's how Draft Deeper was born. It was really my wanting to continue to try and break into the basketball industry, and getting that experience with EV Hoops, we were able to go scout games. We were able to participate in conversations with other executives and clients, and being able to gain some of that knowledge. It was like, well, I know how to do this, right? Like, why not give some of this knowledge to the public, kind of give the public an insight into how scouts actually operate on a day-to-day basis. And then in turn, being able to continue to evaluate prospects, do that whole thing. So that was really what started Draft Deeper, and what I wanted to be is I wanted to be a public scouting service where we're not keeping any insider secrets, right? We're putting everything out there in terms of how we evaluate guys and how we talk about them, and we just want to be able to have conversation with everybody, especially people like you guys. We want to be on these shows, and not just to advertise for the service, but we just want to talk about basketball, man. That's what inspired Draft Deeper.
That's excellent stuff. And, I've interacted with you guys a little bit on not a little bit, more so on Twitter than obviously, kind of face to face via the internet, right? This type of dialogue. And, you guys have been very friendly, very informative. I like the fact that I just started getting into evaluating talent. I've always been a fan of basketball. I feel like I have a little bit of an eye for talent, but when you actually start scouting, like, that's different. When you look at a basketball player and say, oh, hey, this guy is pretty good at playing basketball. Well, how does that translate? Things like that. And anytime that I've reached out to you guys or discussed a certain player online, especially on Twitter, right? You guys you have said your piece without making me feel completely like I had no idea what I was talking about. And I greatly appreciate about that.
That's the whole point, man, because it's not like we're complete 100% experts either. We're all still learning. So if we were experts, we might be working in a front office right now, but we're still learning as well. We're young, so why treat anybody else like they don't have any knowledge? Everybody has a point that they can contribute at all times, and usually someone else might say something and tweet back to us, and that might make me think about something differently. So that's what it's all about. It's about conversation and sharing ideas.
Yeah, Steven makes me think way too much on this show already as it is. So.
Oh God, thinking. What's
thinking
that?
Is a good thing.
Oh no, it is definitely. I'm really excited for what you guys have to say. I'm definitely the draft novice out of the four of us for sure. So I've been doing a lot more with it this year than I have ever before. But I'm excited to learn from you guys. So.
No doubt. So Nate, thank you for sharing your origin story. Cole, a little bit more about you, if you would be so kind, please.
Sure. Like Nate, it started around high school. Thoughts started to develop about trying to get into talent procurement, identification, something like that on the sports side of things. And it kind of was born out of baseball, I'll be honest. I started playing dynasty baseball in high school, and that's where my love of like just researching prospects started to kick in. And once I had that love, it never really left me. I started to look at school for sport management programs. And I, fell in love with the idea of going to school for sport management and trying to work on the basketball team, and somehow being like a scout for, the last guy on the bench and being a scout for a college team. So I toured around a couple colleges, got a good feel for a few different sport management programs, and thought that Drexel would be the best fit for myself, close to home, being from South Jersey. And they seemed to have one of the better up and coming sport management programs. So I signed myself up. and luckily my dad had gone there, so I got in pretty easy. And from there, I was able to, they really preached the internship at Drexel, if you know anything about them. So I first picked up an internship with the 76ers early in my sophomore year, working for a guy by the name of Harvey Pollock, who was Yep, you might know him. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. He did pass away shortly after I got the chance to work for him, sadly. But it was a wonderful time. I was always early to the office and got to learn so much and just hear so many great stories from all his experience from working with the team for 40 plus years. But it was one of the last weeks I was there. I got an email from one of my advisors, Heather Blackburn, and she was passing around a job description from Nate's eventual boss and my boss at the time, my eventual boss as well, Alon, as he mentioned earlier. And it was like he was just asking for an intern to come on and then do a lot of the grunt work that he had for his special projects that we worked on, but also someone that was willing to contribute their basketball ideas and not be willing to learn and be open to learning what he had to teach. And so I emailed him immediately as soon as I got that. And he replied back, it was like, I don't think you'll have time between school, the Sixers internship, and what I want you to do. And I said, no, you don't understand. The Sixers internship ends next week. Please give me a chance. Like, let's meet for coffee in somewhere in the city. And he was like, all right, let's go. So we met up. And like you guys are asking, what one of his first questions is what was your first basketball memory? Like, why did you fall in love with basketball? And of course, being from South Jersey, it's Allen Iverson.
There you go.
Hands down. One of my dad's high school friends had season tickets, and we used to sit in the rafter area right behind the hoop, like 2 rows behind his mom. So I have tons of memories of going to see AI and hearing and seeing his mom just go crazy for him. So that was where basketball was definitely, my love for basketball happened. And as I got to work for Alon and appreciate his eye for talent and the things he watched for, I just it drove me to be better, both in basketball and baseball. I still do a lot of dynasty baseball on the side here, but I've wanted to stick with basketball just because out of that internship with Harvey and the Sixers, there was a few times I would get to stay throughout the whole day and get to stay for game nights. And man, when 501 rolled around, the energy in the building just turned to a whole new level. And that was during some of the early tank years. So it's not like the Sixers were any good, but the energy in the building was incredible. It was contagious. Everybody was just, so much more excited. And I was like, man, I want to be a part of that somehow. And I think if I ever get to be a part of it, this is probably my best option. So here we are trying to chip away and hopefully get there one day.
Yeah, and you two do a lot of great work. I'm really looking forward to getting into kind of evaluating how we evaluate talent, things like that. But before we get into hits and misses and who we think's next and things like that, Cole, I want to pose this question to you. And you've had a lot of experience, the both of you. What do you look for in a player? And I'm sure it's going to be based on position and things like that and team need. But really, what do you think makes a player be able to translate, whether that be from college, whether that be from now what we see in the G League or even internationally? Like what skill sets allow a player to be able to contribute at that next level?
Yeah, so without getting too specific here, I think every player needs to have at least one carrying skill, and honestly, 1.5. So something that they can do extremely well, and then something they can fall back on if that's not going right for them that day. And then hopefully they have, a couple other areas where you can see they're getting better, but that obviously depends on the spectrum of where you think this guy is a star or role player, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But as far as just simple overall qualities that I look for, generally if I'm scanning a game that I don't know much about any of the guys on the floor, I'm looking guys who can competently handle the basketball on a regular basis and pass the basketball right, make the right decisions on a consistent basis. Guys who have good shooting touch. If you can't shoot, handle, or pass, you're not making it very far in basketball today. I feel like it doesn't matter what position you play. So on a general basis, that's definitely what I'm looking for. And then, of course, athleticism matters. You can't be a plotter. The guy in the Illinois game today was certainly very magical, but he's not an NBA level athlete. So, those are the general things I look for. And then you can get into the intangibles and whatnot. But heart, hustle, do his teammates like him? I think that's pretty easily discernible if you watch a guy enough, stuff like that. And then, what I would like to know on top of that is all the, what makes them tick. I would love to be able to get in a room and talk to guys on another level. I think that's the one thing I miss the most in my draft evaluation, but not to get too off steer there. That's what I look for on a general basis.
No, that's great stuff. Nate, how about you, man? What do you think makes a player be able to translate and play at that next level?
Cole hit on a lot of the stuff that you can get off film, just how we're able to evaluate prospects right now. It's a little troubling that I wanted to start a draft service in the middle of a pandemic when I couldn't be going to games and seeing a lot of these guys up close. But that's probably the other half to the book, is everything you learn about them off the court, as well as seeing them in a game in person, how much that athleticism just pops, right? Like there are things that you can see when you're at a game that you can't see on camera, like on film, how we're studying guys right now, but also just being able to be there for after the game interviews, trying to talk to different people around the team, trying to get to know the guys a little bit, exactly as Cole said in his last point, what makes them tick, right? Because all of that stuff matters too. Like, for example, we were just talking off the air a little bit about one of our favorite guys coming up in this 2021 draft, Jalen Suggs. Well, the reason why everybody likes Jalen Suggs is because he's arguably the best leader in this draft class. You can tell from start to finish, he's playing hard for his teammates. He's giving everything he's got. He's vocally communicates well with his teammates as well as his coaching staff. And those are things that you get a better feel for when you're actually in the arena, because you can hear a lot of that, right? If you're sitting close enough, like if you're a scout at the game, you have your little media credential, like you're up close and personal, you can hear that. So that's a lot of the stuff that matters, and I miss getting, just like Cole, because it can help change draft evaluation. Like when you get to learn about somebody, I'll give another example. We're going to talk about a hit and a miss and somebody we like from this upcoming class, but one of my misses previously was Josh Jackson. That wasn't necessarily a miss because of his talent. I think you're certainly seeing that talent level surface as he's gotten more comfortable adjusting to professional life. In the NBA, certainly had even some great makes this year for Detroit, but a lot of what's held him back are things that happen off the court that, life hits us all in different ways, and getting to know a little bit more about him and his backstory and where he's come from. Some of that information may or may not have changed my evaluation, and having him potentially as the number one guy out of that draft class. Like I had him above Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball because of the talent, because of his ability at 6'8" to be able to handle the basketball, make decisions for others. He was improving his jump shot during that whole entire year. Like by the time the year was over, his catch and shoot mechanics looked a lot better than what they did when he first stepped foot at Kansas. And that was a big thing that everybody thought he needed to improve on. But without having some of that other information, your evaluation can technically be wrong, because what's the talent if you can't actually put everything together to make it work on the court? So there's a lot that goes into scouting, but Cole talked about a lot of the things that you can notice. And yeah, I miss getting some of that other information too.
Yeah, no doubt. So Austin, after hearing this, man, like, there anything that you are kind of pen and papering right now, what you want to look for moving forward with evaluating talent, or do you hit on a lot of these same levels when you look at guys?
I mean, they hit a lot of things that I would definitely say are important, and I mean, things that I look for somewhat. I mean, like he said, both of them said, actually getting in a room with these guys would be amazing. But beyond that, they hit on just about everything that I've been kind of looking for in this draft class. I've got my thoughts on some guys that I'm interested if we get a chance, but we'll get to that.
All right, right on. And I just want to point out, when you get to these upper echelon players, right, like guys that are going to be that top, 1 through 5, 1 through 7, maybe. I like to look at what these guys do when they don't have the ball in their hands. Are they parked in one spot? Are they willing to set screens for other people? Do they cut? Like I love looking, and no pun intended, because we're part of the Off the Ball network. I love looking at what they do off the ball. Like what do they do when they don't have the ball in their hand? Because a lot of these guys, when they get to that next level, not every one of them are going to be the de facto playmaker. It just really depends on team situation, things like that. What we see with LaMelo Ball is not what we're seeing with Tyrese Halliburton. If both of these guys are drafted in separate universes on the Hornets, they're probably both going to be that lead playmaker. But Tyrese Halliburton in Sacramento plays alongside De'Aaron Fox, who is the de facto point guard. So what he does off the ball makes it a little bit easier for him to translate to some of these other scenarios, in my humble opinion. So Austin, I feel like we got a good, history, their origin story, things like that. Let's get to these hit and misses, man. What do you say?
All right. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Nate, I would like to pose to you. Now, you provided us this information beforehand, and I am so glad on the guy that you selected for your hit in this draft. I'm just curious as to why. I was really big on him. But the player that you think that's hit so far in this draft is who?
So far, and again, it's really early to be determining hits and misses.
Of course, I should have led with that. Yes, I mean there's a long way to go for these guys.
But in terms of one guy that I've had my eye on, I know Cole had his eye on during the 2020 process, who's really started to make some things work, is Jaden McDaniels. 6'10" forward, drafted 28th overall for the Minnesota Timberwolves, was looked at one point as a potential top 10, top 5 guy. Mike Schmitz and Jonathan Gavoni had him number 1 overall at some point in the pre-draft process. So it's not like he was devoid of talent. It's not like that he should have slipped as far as he did, but there was a lot of stuff out of high school and then him getting to Washington that people didn't think that he was assertive enough on offense or had like this amazing feel for the game despite all the tools he was able to showcase in high school, being the 6'10" versatile scorer from the perimeter, able to shoot the ball from 3, handle the basketball, make decisions for others a little bit. People didn't feel like enough of that translated at Washington, which – yeah, he had a little bit of trouble offensively because he doesn't have this amazing build on him, right? Like he's long, but he's lanky. So obviously he's going to struggle finishing inside a little bit. But one thing that people overlooked tremendously was his defense. And I can't for the life of me figure out why nobody talked about his defense pre-draft, because he would make like 3 to 4 deflections in a game in a row for Washington, where you're like, holy cow, like – how is nobody talking about this guy as a potential lottery pick anymore? Like, yeah, sure, some of the shooting percentages aren't there, but at the same time, he's still really young. He can grow into shooting the ball better. He showed an aptitude for doing it back in high school. So for some of the things that he may have lacked at doing a little bit at a high enough level at Washington offensively, he made up for it defensively in his energy, his hustle, and his tenacity, which people talked about going back to high school. He had some motor concerns. Well, I didn't see that at Washington. I didn't see that one bit in Washington, and I certainly haven't seen it with the Timberwolves either. While he's not the lights-out offensive player quite yet for Minnesota either, at the same time he's been able to stay on the court and get more opportunities because of his defensive playmaking. I mean, he's averaging 1.5 steals and blocks combined per game, and he's only playing like 20 minutes a night. So that's a pretty good number, and Cole mentioned, and that's something I look for too when you're evaluating these guys. They have to have like 1 to 2 skills that can translate so that they can earn minutes, so that they continue to expand parts of their game. Well, he has been shooting 38.5% on corner threes, which if you're shooting like close to 40% on corner threes, like that's an easy shot to be able to make when you're open. That's going to get you touches. That's going to get you minutes. So
100%.
Everything that he can't do, he's able to do enough. And given the size and the upside that we laid out for during his high school career, he's going to get his opportunities to really keep improving as long as he stays diligent and keeps working hard. And he's kept on working hard. His brother in Charlotte was also the very hard worker up to this point. He wasn't exactly a high draft pick either, but he had to work some things out in the G League, and he's gotten more opportunities with one of the most exciting teams in the NBA this year. So I still expect big things from Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, I liked him a lot too. I'm curious, just real quick, Nate, do you remember where you had him on your big board?
So I had him as a lottery guy. So I had him like late lottery. Fun fact, we don't really do big boards over here at Draft Deeper anymore. We kind of shied away from the big board aspect because we like talking about avenues for these guys more and how they're going to develop and ways that they can develop and improve versus just focusing on saying this guy's better than that guy.
Sure.
But I did do a 2020 big board, and he was like back end of the lottery for me. Not too high, but at the same time, a guy where you're like, you can't let this guy like fall to like the late first round like he did.
I had him ridiculously high. I loved his game so much, specifically for the defensive capabilities that you listed. I looked at him defensively and you talk about avenues. There's an avenue where he could be like a Robert Covington style defender in the NBA, where he may be serviceable man to man, but that help rotation, you could definitely, at least for me, when watching him play in Washington, I could see him developing into a very capable weak side help defender. And that being his kind of lane that he could play. I actually had him 5th on my board, so y'all please don't throw like tomatoes at me or whatever. But
no, I think he was probably like if he wasn't the best weak side shot blocker in the whole class, he's definitely like top 3 out of everybody coming in. But that was just people don't want to talk about defense all the time, right? They want to talk about offense.
I love defense.
So
I love defense.
Right.
But anyway, so Austin, what do you think about that Jaden McDaniels as the hit for Nate?
I mean, it sounds like you guys were pretty spot on. He's had a good year so far for sure. You mentioned something about the G League, and I was actually kind of interested to ask you guys both this, how you felt. How now, guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Jalen, is it Jalen Green?
Green.
Yeah, Jalen Green.
Not so.
Yep. Both decided to go to the G League this year, and we didn't get to see a whole lot of them. Recently, they played a little bit, but do you guys adjust how you evaluate them at all since they're not playing against college?
That's a good question.
College opponents, or is it just the same thing?
Colin can take the G League question. You love Jalen Green especially, so
I love Jalen Green too.
So
that's why I was asking.
Right. If anything, I would say the G League it's definitely no worse than the highest level of competition. Like if you take the top 6 to 8 teams of college, it's probably what the G League is at this point in terms of like consistent competition game to game. So I think they should be held in a little bit higher light. They're going against pros. They're going against guys who have had pro instruction for at least 1 year, if not a lot more, some of them. And
Jeremy Lin being one of them.
Right. And the guys
actually
on
good vets. Yeah.
Yeah. The guys on their own team, like there was just a different air about the G League this year. It felt like with Ignite being in there as well. So I thought I think they need to be evaluated as such. And, I kind of have them in the same light as a kid playing overseas a little bit against grown men at this point.
Right.
I thought it was a very good landscape for these guys.
Awesome. That's good to hear. I watched quite a bit of it, and I was pretty impressed with Jalen Green. So I wanted to get a feel for how the talent was stacked up around him. So very cool.
There you go. All right. Yeah, so Cole. Go ahead, Nate. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a good way for everybody to think about it in case they haven't really gotten a chance to watch the G League or get to know a lot about it is a lot of these guys, and Cole mentioned it somewhat about the veterans, but a lot of these guys either haven't made the league yet or they're looking to get back into the league. So they're trying to prove themselves at a very high level and actually earn a job. Whereas some of these college teams you might play, like they have prospects on there where they're probably not going to make the league or they're going to end up in that same boat. They might not be playing quite as hard all the time for a full game as some of these G League guys are. So it's kind of like, think about if you're at a job and there's somebody going to take your spot. You're probably not going to just slack off, that you could potentially lose your payroll, right? You want to bring home the bread to your family. So you're going to work as hard as you can. That's a great way to think about the competition they're going up against every night.
Awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys like Jarrett Jack, there was one game I watched him. He was just lights out in one of those competitions against the Ignite. So, Cole, I'm going to go ahead and openly say I'm ashamed of myself that I wasn't high on this player that I know that you hit on from last year's draft. And I think that there was a little bit of reason why someone could be skeptical, but especially when you started hearing comparisons such as Jason Kidd, things like that in some draft circles. Not saying you, but I have heard that from a lot of people about the player that you're going to name here in a second. So the guy that you hit on from this last year's draft was who, Cole?
It's Peyton Pritchard out of Oregon. Wow, Jason Kidd. Didn't think I ever heard that one in evaluating him, but I've
heard it several times. It blew my mind.
He's a few inches shorter, so I don't even think I could even get down that road to start.
Right.
But so I'll go all the way back to Pritchard's freshman year. He kind of caught my eye. It was the same year as Lonzo Ball was in the Pac-12, so there was plenty of Pac-12 basketball to watch that year. And as a freshman, he was, he is a little undersized, and he wasn't as physically mature as he is now at this point, and as he was as a senior last year. So he caught my eye because, like I said to you guys on the first question you asked me, he could shoot, he could handle, he could pass, despite being undersized. And I think the first game I watched, I heard he was a coach's son. So that always makes me pay attention a little bit more as well. If there's bloodlines involved, or if, he's got a coaching pedigree, family pedigree, that is. And so he just caught my eye from being able to come up with some big plays as a freshman, undersized, pretty sturdy handle, very confident in himself, pretty good shooter. And I was like, I'll pay attention to this guy. He's definitely not going anywhere as a freshman. Fast forward a couple years, all those things are improving. He's a much better shooter. I think what sort of really solidified Pritchard in my eyes was his junior postseason run, both in the Pac-12 tournament and the March Madness tournament. He put Oregon on his back over about 7 games. He was averaging 17 a game and 6.5 assists a game, which were well up from his numbers on his season numbers as a junior. He took his team to the Pac-12 championship and a deep tourney run. So all the things that I think I look for in an upperclassman guard were starting to like really come true about Pritchard. You have to have poise as your lead guard on the team. The team has to, you have to command the team. He was doing that. He was willing the team to win really. As a junior, there was not a ton of talent around him by that point versus freshman year. And his shooting had reached levels like he had such balls. He was ripping shots from deep that I didn't think he was really capable of making. And I was like, wow, okay, this guy is. You have to sit up and pay attention to a guy who's confident in himself like that. And so you get to his senior year, and he's All-American level, averaging 20 a game and really going off. And the only thing keeping Oregon relevant. So I thought what would translate was his handle. I thought he had a very good handle. I thought he was shifty. I thought he had very sharp dribble moves, albeit nothing too fancy. His crossover is super sharp, and he gets downhill in a hurry. So I thought combined with that and his footwork that he would be able to create enough space. He gets pretty good elevation on his jumper too. So I thought all those things were working in his favor, that he would be able to get his jumper off both in the mid-range, and that he was definitely a good enough shooter from three, both off the dribble and from a standstill position. So I thought really the only knocks on Pritchard going into the draft were obviously his size. He's 6'2", 6'2.5", whatever it is. He's a little thicker, so he might not look so athletic, but he's kind of deceptively athletic, or basketball athletic, if you will, for me. I always thought the lack of athleticism knocks were a little overstated for him just because of the build. But yeah, I thought Pritchard was a consummate guy, kind of the guy where, the parts outweighed the sum of the parts outweighed each individual part a little bit. And I think so far we're kind of seeing that. And I think Boston is even starting to toy with putting him in as a starter, trying to kickstart their offense a little bit.
Yeah, and he was one of these players too. Like I said, the comparisons probably made me not like him as much, especially, I mentioned Jason Kidd earlier. But some of the things that worried me about him, we've seen in other college stars, and that's what kind of, how translatable is it? I mean, so Cole, I want to ask you this in particular. I got a two-parter here. One, you mentioned he's a senior. That apparently is like a crimson marker against a player, when they come into the draft, being a senior, something must be wrong with him. That's why, he's been in the college game so long and not tried to be a pro. And then also, how much does scenario play a big part in his success? If he's drafted higher, or a team that doesn't have a Jaylen Brown or a Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, how does that affect how successful he is so far early in his career, obviously?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely helps that he gets to drive and kick to guys like Tatum and Brown and some of the other players that are talented on Boston. But as far as being able to
no, you're fine. So the second part of this was, being a senior, whenever you're coming into the pros and you're not a one and done guy, or even a sophomore. We see sophomores get these looks, but juniors and seniors in particular, you rarely see them drafted highly because, the term potential is thrown around for these younger guys. And apparently when you're 23 years old, you can't learn how to play basketball as easily at a high enough level.
Right. So I think that needs to be kind of thrown out the wind. I think we've seen a lot more upperclassmen get drafted higher recently. And one thing, especially for point guards and lead guards, I think Nate and I both look for is kind of what kind of culture have you set in your time there as the lead guard? And two guys we really like at Baylor this year have both really set a winning culture, or been a part of a winning culture. That's part of the reason we like them a lot. And I thought Pritchard, kind of did the same thing. And another guy that got drafted last year that I think will show up eventually is Cassius Winston, another guy in a big time.
Oh, I'm a big Winston guy.
Another guy from a big time winning culture. And so I think guys who play in winning cultures and are an obvious reason as to why their team is winning, you really have to take notice of what their ability is. And, I think you just have to pay attention, because Pritchard is athletic for his size. He does have NBA level quickness. And yeah, I mean, but winning is a big part of it. And Pritchard's example, he leads Oregon in career wins. And so that was a big thing that stood out to me. He both, like I said, in his junior year, he was really the driving engine on that team in tournament play when they really did not have anything. And then again, senior year, he carried that team. And I think when you're carrying a team to that level, you got to be doing something right regardless of what year you're in. And so it's not like, and he wasn't an old senior for his class. He was right on time.
Right.
Didn't he rip off like 4 championships in a row going back to high school too? Wasn't it something crazy like that?
Yeah, the kid's pretty decorated player dating back to his high school years.
Yeah, just winning at every level. Austin, do you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I kind of like to add a little more value to a lot of those guys that are, seniors or older, especially guards, like you guys talked about. I've always kind of felt like you may not always get, a diamond in the rough with those guys, but you at least know you've got a guy that knows how to play, knows how to win big games, like you were saying. And, outside of maybe the top 7 or 8 picks, like how many guys are really going to become superstars? So I just think guys like that are almost kind of, like a can't miss kind of thing. Like you may not get that star, but you're going to get a solid, rotation player for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. And Cole, one more question I have for you while I'm on this Peyton Pritchard thing, because I really want to learn from my mistake in this draft, because I was not high on him at all. And a guy that I think had a little bit of the, he passed, and he shot really well, but he could not do anything in the pros, was Jimmer Fredette. So kind of like, what separates a Jimmer Fredette situation from a Peyton Pritchard?
So I think it really just comes down to, I think Pritchard's a little bit bigger. I could be wrong there. But he's just quicker with the ball in his hands. Pritchard is just a lot quicker with the ball in his hands, and he's got a little bit more junk from his first step. You can stunt. He's got better ball stunts, and then he's just got a very quick crossover, and he's not afraid to bust it out. And he's very easily able to change direction while executing that crossover. And then he'll go right into a spin move. So he's got a couple of different ways where he's able to quickly escape danger. And I don't think Jimmer ever really had that. He was so reliant on screens and just trying to pull up from serious range.
All right, fair enough. And yeah, now that you're saying that makes a lot of sense. I got to change how I look at these guys, because I'm afraid of saying a guy is going to be good and then he ends up being a Jimmer Fredette. But,
Okay, can I defend you for a second on Pritchard, though?
No, please do, Nate. It would make me feel better.
So Pritchard's a guy that I didn't have him as a first rounder either.
I didn't either.
But I had him as a priority second round guy, and I had him as a priority guy because the skill base was there for him to come in. He had all the tools of what you would want out of a point guard, as Cole laid out: dribble, pass, and shoot. He could do all of that at a high level. But what held me back, besides the everything you would not want your point guard in terms of like an undersized guy, like all of the usual gripes we have with undersized point guards, besides that stuff, because you kind of got to throw that to the wayside if you're depending on where you're taking him. But I thought he was really overconfident at times at Oregon. Like for as many games that he would shoot his team into it, he would also tend to shoot his team out of those games. So feel free to disagree with me, Cole. That was just something that I saw from the film, but that would have been an area where if we would have had some of that, being able to talk to him off the court and get to know kind of the person who he is, his leadership style, and being able to come into the NBA, take a back seat to whatever they want to do, and then come and just operate the point guard position the right way, not worrying about how many shots I'm getting up, just things like that. I think that information would have absolutely boosted his draft stock, at least on my personal board. Because, yeah, if he would come into the Boston Celtics and all of a sudden just start jacking up 30-footers like nobody's business under Brad Stevens' nose, like Brad Stevens is going to bench him. But coming into a culture like that, you mentioned where these guys land. He knows that playing under a coach like him and for a respected executive like Danny Ainge, he's going to have to come in and play the game the right way. And luckily, being a coach's son, having those bloodlines, he does know how to play the game the right way. He doesn't have to be the Superman like he had to at Oregon at times. So it's just picking up on little things like that could have probably swayed you, Steven, just like it could have swayed me.
Yep, and we take those lumps and we learn, and that's how we get better, right?
Yes,
so there we go. All right, so Austin, fellas, we touched on the guys that we hit on this last draft, and again, like I'm going to say the term miss very loosely, right? Because their first rookie year isn't even finished yet, right? But maybe we had higher expectations on these guys than the output that they're giving us currently. Cole, I want to start with you again. Precious Achiuwa was a guy that you said that you missed on. Now, this one was interesting to me because he kind of came on the scene a little hot, for Miami. He was a guy that everyone's like, oh, look at this, another Bam Adebayo on their team. Why do you feel like you've missed according to what expectations you had on him so far?
Yeah, so it's more about a couple of things that I think are trending up for Precious at this point that I missed on, and I think that has to do with decision making and touch, and I think he will be able to extend his jumper out eventually. It might take a bit longer than people might have thought after his explosion early in the season, but with Precious, when I got eyes on him at Memphis, it was like I said, I thought his feel for the game as a ball handler or as a decision maker out on the perimeter was a little undercooked. I didn't really see it if he was going to be a small ball five or an undersized forward without a jump shot to be, setting picks and then also being able to maybe pass out of that. I didn't really see that a ton out of Memphis at him. So that's where I kind of landed. I obviously saw the motor. It's hard to miss that.
Yeah.
He has an impressive physique. Those were obviously things I didn't miss on. So I just thought some of the finer points of his game weren't going to trend up. And I think I think he heard me. And when he came to Philadelphia and he got to show off against Embiid on the glass and then show a couple of things, with the ball in his hands on the perimeter, driving from the corner and fading away on a couple of jump shots, I think he was like, here you go, Cole. I'll show you. I can do all these things. It's just not going to happen right away. So he has kind of fallen out of the rotation, like you said, with Miami lately. I think that's more about Miami this year trying to shore things up as they get, trying to right the ship for the playoff run here. And he's just not ready to contribute consistently offensively. But on defense, man, he's a monster. And just on the glass in general, he's got a 4% block rate already, which is in the 90th percentile.
That's nuts. Yes.
13 minutes a game or something, minimal like that. And he's, very high up in both percentiles on offensive and rebounding class. So, the anchors of his profile are definitely going to keep him in the league for a long time. And it's going to keep him on the floor for a long time to help him learn all those things he's going to, that will make him an effective offensive player in time. I'm really excited to see what he does morph into at this point. So, it was more about the couple of finer skill things that I didn't think wouldn't pan out for him.
Yeah, and I was kind of along those same lines too. His defense didn't really scream like NBA big man. You know what I mean? Like that was where I was at with him. And then, like you mentioned too, his decision making. I'm looking at my profile on him right now. I have vision and defense were kind of my question marks for him coming into the league. And Miami develops the heck out of players, so it's kind of best case scenario for him in my opinion. Where he was drafted was very well suited. I had him as a high second on my big board, so I'm very interested, to see now Nate, who you have. This is a guy that you missed on. I missed on him too. I was not high on this kid at all, and a lot of people were, and he shot up the draft boards kind of coming into the draft. So Nate, who do you got for your biggest miss from last year's draft?
Yeah, the classic riser. As soon as everyone actually gets him off the court, gets to talk to him, and then gets him in for workouts, all of a sudden he just shoots up draft boards. Patrick Williams out of Florida State. So he didn't have a big starring role at Florida State, came off the bench, wasn't exactly able to showcase everything he could do. And we get those guys every year. Like we were just talking about Bam Adebayo, another great example of that. Didn't get to showcase everything he could do at Kentucky. Now he's an all-star, pretty much doing everything you would want an NBA basketball player to do. And Patrick Williams is showcasing a lot of the same tools. So I had him in the 20s.
Okay.
On my final board. I think I had him around like 22, 23, somewhere like that. I never had him higher than like 11 or 12, I don't think. So I never had him in like a top 10 range. But he shot all the way up to 4th. Why? Because teams got to interview him, especially Chicago. They got him in for some workouts towards when everything was tailing off with COVID, when NBA teams were actually allowed to do some of that. And they were able to work him out more as a 3 instead of a 4. My whole thing with Patrick Williams was, if you're drafting him, I think you're expecting him to come in and be more of a 3-4, like more of a wing-oriented perimeter player than as a 4-man. Because if you're expecting him to be a 4-man, I don't think he's quite worth that kind of a value, like a top 10 value. But in spurts or in small stretches at Florida State, he showcased the 1-2 dribble pull-up. He was able to the soft, feathery mid-range jump shot. He was able to knock down an open 3 when he was given enough time because of his release. And obviously the biggest thing that he did at Florida State that always caught my eye was that he was an excellent cutter off the ball. Stephen, you love talking about what guys can do off the ball. He was probably the best cutter coming into the draft. So I knew at the very least I probably should have valued his defensive versatility more, being able to potentially guard 2 through 4. And then that cutting skill that he has, these are simple things he can do coming in from day one to further expand his game. And now you look at him, I mean, he's gained a lot more confidence playing in Chicago now. His slash line, 46% from the field, almost 40% from 3. 77% from the free throw line, shooting over 44% on corner threes.
That's insane.
Ridiculous. and in 28 minutes a game, he's getting like a full role now for Chicago. And that 4th overall pick, potentially taking a gamble on somebody like him, it's paying off in big ways. So I guess I didn't see him as like a perimeter wing-oriented player right out of the gate coming in, but he's proven that we were wrong about that. And again, if I would have been able to be there for some workouts in the pre-draft process, being able to talk to some people, maybe he would have shot up my draft board last second too, like he did a lot of other people's. But, these things happen. These hidden gems come from out of nowhere, and they surprise us. And you take your lumps, you take your hits and your misses. But I will say I hit on a lot more than I miss. But when I miss, it's usually egregious. Like Pat Williams should not have been in the 20s. So –
I had him lower. I had him as a high second. Yeah, so just according to me. But yeah, that was an egregious one too. So Austin, what do you think, man? We got Precious Achiuwa and Patrick Williams as the biggest misses for these guys. Do you have anybody that you kind of want to divulge, or do you want to go in a little bit more on their guys?
Actually, Precious is one that I actually watched quite a bit of in college and felt like he had the physical look of an NBA lottery pick for sure. He had the athleticism, he had the, like you said, the physique, but I just didn't see a whole lot of real standout skills that he had. That he just seemed like a big time project to me in a lot of ways. But like you said, Steven, Miami's probably the best place for a guy like that to end up. And then Patrick Williams, I didn't really know a whole lot about. I was actually, when I watched the draft, I was actually fairly upset that they didn't take Obi Toppin right there, because I'm in Indiana, so I've followed the Bulls a little bit my whole life, and my dad's a big fan of them. So I just didn't know a whole lot about him, but he's been a heck of a lot better than what I expected for sure.
Yeah, he's one of the younger guys too that came into the draft. So
that's the other thing; he has age on his side, so he can just only keep getting better.
Yeah, and NBA players love getting like these, barely legal basketball players on their team to where they can, try to develop them and keep them going for years and years to come. So, all right, fellas, we talked about guys that we've hit on, who we've missed on. Now the question that everybody is waiting for is who's next? Out of all these guys, we're in the midst of March Madness right now. NIT kind of playing the second fiddle as it normally does. We got international guys coming in too. So who are some of these guys that you're looking at to come in and make a big difference next?
I'll start. I mean, I'll go with one of my favorite prospects in this draft class. Not saying that I have him among the top 5 of a lot of the big names you might hear, but Jared Butler out of Baylor is a guy he is a basketball guy's guy. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is when you watch him, he just plays the game the right way in so many different aspects. You talk about on-ball scoring. He's improved his handle. He's a crafty guard inside. He's a 3-level scorer. Really improved his playmaking. NBA teams wanted him to go back to college and improve his playmaking on the ball, be a better decision maker, play out of pick and roll. He's certainly done that this year. I mean, he's in the 87th percentile according to Synergy and pick and rolls, including passes. So he's clearly improved in that area. And then everything he does off the ball, he's one of the best relocators in this draft class in terms of reestablishing himself from 3 and then getting an open look. Like one of the plays that I highlighted in the draft profile we have up right now on draftdeeper.com, if anybody wants to go read it, it was one of my test profiles I put up there. But I picked a clip specifically where he set a screen, then relocated off that screen for an open 3 at the top of the court. And that to me, that's just beautiful basketball. That's doing something that can help somebody else get open. But when that look isn't there, you're able to get the ball back and then make something happen with it. So just a very smart player, and then obviously competitive defensively. All those perimeter guys at Baylor are tough as nails on the defensive end. So you're not going to lose anything there either. One of the best steals guys in the country. So he's just a complete guard, and probably to wrap up my evaluation on him, I'm not saying he's the same player as Donovan Mitchell because they're different athletically, but when Donovan Mitchell was coming out of Louisville, I said to myself, this guy has all the tools. How does this guy fail? And in that way, I just feel the same way as Jared Butler. I don't see how Butler fails in the NBA. So that's why that. And hey, if I had a top 10 pick potentially in this draft, I'm not even kidding. I'm looking at him anymore. So if I need a leader and a floor general.
Yeah, I actually had him. I thought he was going to come out last year. I had him as a, kind of a mid-second rounder last season out of his time in Butler, and I'm surprised that he came back, and glad that he did, because now he's skyrocketing up a lot of people's boards. And the way you evaluated him, Nate, you can't watch him and deny anything that you just said about the guy. All right, Cole. So who do you have as your guy to kind of keep an eye on as we go forward for this upcoming draft?
Yeah, so I'm going to list some qualities here, and you guys can nod your heads yes if you think you want this prospect on your team.
Okay.
At least want to take a harder look at him. And
we'll say yes for the people who are listening. For the viewers, exactly. We'll nod. We'll say yes for the listeners. But yeah, let's hit it.
Okay, so above average size for the lead guard spot. Yes. Above average to
absolutely
plus handle. Above average to plus handle.
Yes.
Plus ability to create off the dribble for himself.
Yes.
Plus shooter in general.
Yes.
Has an improving in between game with a floater, pull up, step back, J arsenal.
Yes.
And has pretty good touch around the rim and is a very creative finisher.
Yes, to all of these things. Yes.
Right. So that's Tre Mann to me right now.
Okay.
On Florida.
Okay.
And I think this is kind of what it looks like when it arrives. His last 7 games have been extremely impressive. He's averaging 20 a game on, let's see if I can find the numbers here, 20 a game on 5.8 rebounds, 3 assists a game. Now, the 3 assists might be a little lacking to some of you out there, but
watch the film.
Watch the film. Florida's not really loaded with talented finishers, and he's making some pretty high-level passes to these guys that they're just not converting easy looks on. So that number should really be a lot better. And to just illustrate that how much he has gotten better as a playmaker for others, his assist rate as a freshman was 7%. It's jumped to 22% this year. That's a hell of a jump for a guy. So I think the light is really starting to turn on for Tre Mann here. There are, of course, some knocks. He's not extremely explosive at 6'5", but he is very, very smooth. I think his body has still got a chance to unlock some explosive and even put on some better weight. I was doing some reading. It turns out he put on like 15 pounds going into this season, so his body's already begun to improve in that regard. He is the same age as a lot of the top freshmen this year. He's 20, and he's on track to stay 20 this year, like Cade and Jalen Johnson and a couple of the other guys.
Okay.
So I can't really knock him for age. The light just seems to be turning on for him at this juncture, and at 6'5", and that skill set. I think people need to start taking a seriously long look at Tre Mann towards the late lottery, if not even higher.
Right. That's all. That's fair. I like everything that you said about him, and I love that you enthralled us with the whole, like, I'm going to give you guys a questionnaire, and if you like these things, let me know. So, I mean, answering all those things, yes, obviously makes it very easy for Tre Mann to be looked at as a
yes or no questions are easy for me. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, I like to throw in a maybe every once in a while.
Right. Seriously, Tre Mann is somebody that I've actually watched quite a bit of. I've been pretty high on him. I just felt like, kind of echoing what you said, he. Just watching him, he just oozes potential, and you can see in moments where he could just take over. Yeah. But he's really put it together, throughout the SEC tournament and now in the NCAA tournament as well. So he's somebody that I had my eye on already too. So I'm glad you picked him.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we're kind of coming up against it now for the radio segment. Got a couple more questions if you guys are game. Not very long. We won't keep you. But, once we close out for the radio segment here, love to ask you guys a couple more if you guys are up for it.
Absolutely. Bonus podcast. There you go.
Bonus podcast content.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So for everyone who's been listening to us on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio tonight, thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, we're on every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And you can catch great shows much like this one, twice a week. And we thank you guys so much for your support. Speaking of thank you for support, shout out to Manscaped. Just want to remind everybody, get 20% off plus free shipping with code BTG at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code BTG. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. With Manscaped. So for our awesome guests today, Nate and Cole, thank you guys so much for coming on. Don't be a stranger. We got to have you guys back on again.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you guys.
All right. And Austin, as always, thank you so much for everything that you do.
Of course.
We're going to close out here. So on behalf of us here at Breaking the Game, for Off the Ball Network, where you can go to offtheballnetwork.com for all of your sports needs. Shout out to them. Shout out to Nothing But Net and Dash Radio. It's been fun talking with you guys. We'll catch up with y'all later. Much love, everybody.
Have a good one.
See you.
All right, so that's a long enough pause for us to be able to edit and continue on with the podcast. So that was fun. That was really fun. I'm sorry that we kind of came up against it there at the end of it. But so Nate, what's your evaluation of Tre Mann? Are you kind of on the side of Cole here with him, or do you not see him in that same light?
So it's really funny. Cole texted me a few days ago, and he was like, I'm seeing Tre Mann being talked about as like this potential lottery prospect. Like, do you think that's crazy? And I'm like, do I think that's crazy? So I whipped out the old Hoops Habit fan-sided draft profile that I wrote on Tre Mann, like when he was coming into his frosh year at Florida. And I basically compared his quick trigger three-point shooting and his tendency to take that deep shot to like a Trae Young. And I'm like, everybody needs to pay attention to this guy. Like, he could put up some big numbers in Florida. So it was all about getting me back on the Tre Mann bandwagon. It's like, but bro, I was already there, man. I was already there.
There you go. All right, so Cole, what do you feel about Nate's guy Butler? Are you a big Butler guy as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think very early in the season, Nate and I, we both caught Baylor a couple times in a row, and we just were like, dude, Butler just knows the game so well, in and out. And, you know, a lot of what I said about Pritchard just being able to win that will his team to win is so true for Butler and Davion Mitchell, too, his backcourt partner there.
Mm-hmm.
Butler is a terrific prospect. It kind of shocks me when we see these mocks come out and he's still nowhere to be found sometimes.
Yeah, that's nuts. It's nuts. I like him a lot, too. Now, Austin, dare I kind of put you on the spot with these guys, with a player that I know that you're super high on coming into the draft that I don't think is.
Say I'm super high. I just think
you're
he's going to be an
super high
NBA
on him.
I'm not that super high on him. I think he's going to be like the number one pick.
High.
I've always been high on him.
You think he's a first round pick, though, right?
I do definitely think he's a first round pick. Or maybe I'm crazy.
Going off the board a little bit. Okay.
You guys go ahead and tell me what you think about this guy. It's Luka Garza from Iowa. I understand the knocks against him for sure, but I just want to hear what you guys think about him.
It's off to a good start.
I don't know, man. If I'm an NBA team, I don't know if I'm drafting him, only because I think if I really want to bring him into my team, he's probably going to be somebody that's going to get some kind of undrafted deal thrown at him pretty quick. Like I just don't know if I would use a draft pick on him, given that I don't think there's a lot of upside there to really unlock. I don't think he's that special of an athlete at the center position. Like, he's definitely more of a plotter. And I just think that he's a guy that you're going to use in special circumstances. Like, you're probably talking about like 8-10 minutes a night, probably. Like that's the role that I would envision for him. So I get what he's done at Iowa. I appreciate him as a basketball player. I think he's been one hell of a college player. He's been important for that Iowa program, certainly. But I don't know if I personally would draft him, but I understand if somebody would, because of the developing shooting stroke that he's been able to showcase his last 2 years in Iowa. You're seeing him as a stretch big, somebody who can knock down shots and give you a little bit of physicality inside. So I see it, but he's not my guy.
Okay, fair enough.
Cole, what about you, man? Do you think that he's a little bit higher, or do you kind of share the same sentiment as Nate?
I'm pretty much where Nate is. Like he said there at the end, I can understand drafting him with the developing jumper and the range that he's showing, and also there is something to look in the 55 to 60 range. Everybody's kind of throwing darts at that point in most drafts. There is something to be said for bringing in a practice body that can bang with your other bigs and keep things interesting in practice. So he does have that working for him. To pull a little bit of a used car salesman on you, can I interest you in Alperen Sengun? Like, that's the guy.
I was just about to ask about him.
You like back to the basket, a little bit more of a throwback type of style big. Like, I think that's the guy you should really hang your hat on and want to pay attention to in this draft.
Okay.
I was just about to ask about him. I was scrolling through my boards to ask you about kind of a low-key guy that I haven't really heard about a lot of other places. And Sengun was going to be that guy. I think that he's got crazy amount of NBA potential, but I think so. So you wouldn't draft him either? Because I think Luka could be a second round guy, and I think the second round picks are becoming more and more valuable in the league now, right? With their drafts, because of the financial flexibility that you get with them. Understand the perks of getting like a 2-way contract and things like that, but I don't know. I would look at a second round pick on Luka just because of the success that he has, and maybe he kind of works out and develops a little bit. But I don't know. I've seen differing opinions on Luka, so I wanted to get y'all's opinion.
He's going to play in the NBA to make Austin feel better. He will play in the NBA. Like that. That's not up for
fair
debate,
enough.
so.
I'll take it.
No, it's not crazy, honestly. I mean, look, he'll probably get a shot as an 8 to 12 minute guy and come in and just see if he can get buckets, drop buckets real quick, run the floor, and be a hard ass on the blocks.
Right.
There you go.
Okay.
And another guy I want to ask you guys about that I'm kind of kicking around where I have him in the rankings is Santi Aldama out of how do you say it? Loyola. Thank you. Yeah, Santi. What do you guys feel about him? How do you like his kind of stretch big feel that I get from him, or do you guys get that kind of vibe from him at all?
Gonna have to defer to Nate on this one. I haven't caught a ton of him.
Okay.
I'm seeing his name come up in the 40s. All of a sudden, like out of nowhere, as like a second round target. I should know more about. Not that I haven't seen him, but I should know more about him because he's a Patriot League guy. And Cole and I being in the Northeast, that's like we're in Patriot League territory. I got Lehigh 15 minutes from my house, so like I should know more about him. But from what I've seen, I think he's definitely someone I can envision using a second round pick on. I think he's got a good feel for the game. Some of those passes, you've probably just seen the highlights of his passing, like his little whip the around the back pass, similar to what you would see from Sengun that really started catching everybody's eye. And then he's shown a little bit of an ability to stretch the floor as well. So I don't know how much his athletic package translates to the NBA. Yeah. I don't know if he's a good enough NBA athlete, but in terms of his base of skill and what he's able to come in and do potentially from day one, he definitely deserves getting a shot. Like, I think he's a little bit more intriguing to look at to draft than Luka Garza, because Garza is an older player. I think that while I don't think Santi's like this crazy athlete like I alluded to, I think he's a better athlete than Garza. So Garza obviously has size that Santi doesn't have, but at the same time, I'd be more willing to work with that skill set and use a second-round draft pick on somebody like him than somebody like Luka, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I like Aldama a lot, and I don't want to like make you guys feel bad or anything, but I have Synergy, and I watched, that's where I get my game film and stuff. So I'm sure you guys have heard of it, So I don't want to shame anybody here on the podcast for not having a Synergy subscription like me, but I've watched him, and I like his game a lot. He kind of gives me a little bit of like almost kind of like a Davis Bertans feel a little bit with his shot selection and how he could be, but he's also like a pretty solid rebounder. I don't know how well that'll translate at his position. He's 6'11", 215, so kind of, take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. And maybe the league that you said that he was in, Nate, that Patriot League, has a little bit to do with that rebounding opportunities for him. But
rebounding translates. Rebounding's generally a skill that translates.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it worked for Paul Millsap for a while coming out of Louisiana Tech, right? So
yes, sir.
That's where I'm at with that. So now I feel better about Santi Aldama because I'm kind of flirting with taking him a little bit higher than what the average bear is. He's kind of my gem in this draft right now. So
he could rise too. Don't feel bad about it, man. He could rise.
Yeah, I'm high on him. If he's successful, you guys, y'all can have me on your show, and I'll be able to sound like a little bit of an expert there. But Austin, do you have any more questions for the fellas tonight?
Actually, yeah, I kind of want to get a feel for who do you guys think should be the top pick in this upcoming draft? Have you gotten that far yet? Or
there we go.
Who do you like
that's
the
most? A softball question, man. Why did I not ask that on the show?
It's not a softball question because I will let Cole answer this one first, since his answer might be the same as mine, but he's made a case for somebody else to be the number one pick other than Cade.
And I love that, Cole. I love that, Cole.
Yeah, Steven and I were talking briefly about it right before you hopped in there, Austin. But look, Cade is supremely talented. He's got everything you could ask for out of a number one pick. I think he's been aided by playing in college and being in the limelight all year versus the guy I'm about to mention here. But I think Jalen Green, who played in the G League this year, is definitely worthy of the top pick as well. I think he can do just about everything on the basketball court that Cade can do as well. He just happens to be in a shooting guard package versus a jumbo forward playmaking package. But like if you harken back to Kobe Bryant, when he would defend himself, sometimes he was like, 30 a game, 8 rebounds a game, 6, 7 assists a game from the shooting guard spot, man. Like, he would always say that about himself, like, from the shooting guard spot. Of course I did it all. Like, and I think Jalen Green has that, like, in him. I think, he might not average the totals Kobe's going to, Kobe did and never will. But I think he has the ability to score at a supremely high level for a long time in this league. And I think because of that, he's gonna be an easy 5 assists a game guy because he's a willing disher, he's a smart disher, and he's a high level disher too when he wants to be. So, and then he'll sit down on defense and dog somebody, and then ruin 5 plays in a row for the opposing offense. And so I think people just need to. I think there's a little bit of bias for Cade, honestly, and I've said this to Nate off the air. I think he's got the good boy bias, and Jalen doesn't. And I don't think there's a ton of difference in what they're able to accomplish on the floor at this level. And I think Jalen's got him in scoring pretty clearly. And so I think that gives him the edge at the end of the day for me.
Nice. He's actually who I have as my top overall prospect as well.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
So,
good job, Austin.
Right. See, I have been paying more attention this year, Steven.
I just knock you out.
I know.
Good job
I know. But no, for real,
I'm a terrible human being, ladies and gentlemen.
Everything you said, Cole, I love about him. His defense is something that stood out to me a lot in the G League. And what you said about those guys, I think Nate said it about those guys, playing for a paycheck and really giving it their all every night. You could see that from him as well. And everything I've ever heard about the guy or read about him is just that he absolutely loves basketball. Like you never see him without a basketball in his hands, basically. It's just what he did growing up. And I've heard the Kobe comparisons before as well too. And I do see some resemblance there for sure. I mean, that's lofty expectations, but
a little bit.
I don't see if there's anything that he can't do.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That was Green's comparison though. Coming out of high school, everyone was like coming in the next Kobe. So like, it's not that crazy.
No, it's not. He's got a rare air of grit and tenacity about him, and you see it on the court. He looks to eviscerate his opponents. He really does.
And
I like that.
Cole, I want to ask you too, if you could kind of grade the two on athleticism alone, like where does the scale tilt towards
Jalen's
Cade?
Definitely the better athlete. Cade's like got basketball movements that a lot of guys don't have, which makes him why he's special as well. But Cade's got
that old man game that you see.
That's my favorite thing to say. Cade's got grandpa game.
Just smooth.
The game moves around him.
It looks like he's not even really trying that hard or going that fast, and he just goes right by people. It's awesome to see.
Right on. So Nate, now you're on the clock. Who are you drafting with the number 1 pick?
I will stick with Cade.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going to stick with Cade is because my biggest question for him coming into this year was, could he create and hit big shots? Right? Could he be that number 1 option down the stretch? Otherwise, why are you taking him with the number 1 pick? He put Oklahoma State on his back. Not just once, not just twice, not just 3 times. We're talking about someone who did it like 5 to 6 times at least this season down the stretch where, he might have started slow in some first halves, but then he really picked it up in second halves of games and even overtimes and just hit big step back shot after big step back shot. So it wasn't just the passing and his ability to orchestrate the offense from the point guard spot. It was his ability to kind of lean into that 6'8" shot creator size and actually hit those jump shots when they were most needed. So I think that's what I needed to see from him to prove that he was the number 1 pick. And that's what he gave me. That's why I'm going to stick with him number 1. Although I will say that even apart from him or Jalen Green, I think Jalen Suggs was really pushed down from the potential number 1 conversation, and it's a shame because I really love that kid.
I love him too.
If I had a top 5 pick as a general manager and I had the chance to bring him in for an interview and talk to him and get to know him, just knowing that he was a special athlete in high school, quarterback, obviously has that passing game and that point guard mentality, just knowing the kind of athlete he is, that competitor on defense. And when I forget which game it was, I forget who they were playing when he went down with that injury, and everybody thought that like his season was potentially over. And then the man comes out in the damn second half and he just continues to just ball out. Like when he was crying tears that, some of it was obvious because he was upset he might not be playing, but that he was experiencing some real pain. And he sucked it up and he came out to win that game for Gonzaga and helped them win. Like, that's special stuff, man. There are not a lot of guys that are fighting through something like that. So like that to me was like, holy cow, like why is this guy not being talked about as a potential number 1 pick? So he's probably not going to be, but I love Jalen Suggs, man. I would love to be able to draft somebody like him. He's a special person on the court, off the court. That's what I look for in a draft pick.
And that's where I'm at with him too. Like I was telling people earlier in the season, he has since kind of gone down like maybe a peg. Like to me, as the season has progressed, especially with the infusion of the Ignite players, right? Like prior to the Ignite, I was like, I might even take Suggs over Cade. And it's not that I'm anti-Cade. He's a phenomenal player. And I know in today's, age of social media, right? If you take anything away from a guy, you're automatically a hater, right? Like that's not where any of us in this chat live right now. But I like Suggs a lot too, specifically for what you were saying, Nate. His leadership, the intangibles that he has, the fact that he plays like really hard on the defensive end on a team that is full of NBA players right now. I mean, several of the guys that he's playing alongside are going to translate to that next level. And that's where I think it's interesting in evaluating him. We talked about this prior to the start of the show. Does that make him look better that he's playing with these pros, or and there's maybe a layer that we've yet to see when he's going to have less help on that next level? Or does that translate well enough to where you say, we know baseline, this is what he's going to look like at that next level in the NBA?
Can I say that I don't think that team would be undefeated right now if they didn't have him?
Hands really down, without a doubt.
They might be really good, but they wouldn't be undefeated because their early season slate was, I think it was the hardest schedule anybody had in the
really,
first
really
4 weeks of the season. Like they played Kansas. That was their first game off the bat, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Then they played Iowa shortly after. Like they played some big time teams, and they won all of those games handily. And you could just tell from the first possession of his first game, the way he came out defensively and was just going to just hound you for 40 minutes straight. Like that to me, that speaks volumes. And oh, by the way, his biggest inconsistency would be his outside shooting. He's starting to knock down like Steph and Dame range 3-pointers.
Yeah.
Whether it's off the catch or he's even creating some of those shots for himself. So like, I don't know what he can't do on the court at this point. So,
I think there's something to be said about, obviously his numbers aren't going to be where they possibly could be because of how much talent he does have on the roster with him as teammates. But at the same time, he's a freshman that came into a team that has a bunch of high-level NBA prospects and took over, and he's the leader of that team. Yeah. And so I think that says more about him to me than anything about, his numbers may not be quite as good as what somebody else's are, but that's solely out of need,
Yeah. And I think you got to look at
if you don't have Joel Ayayi as a first rounder, you're missing out.
Oh, of course.
You're not in love with that kid.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you're not. He does everything. Like when Suggs is out of the game, he takes over more playmaking responsibilities. He's a heck of a defender. He shoots, he rebounds. He's just, I love him so much. And Nate, I see you comment on him all the time, and I'm on that team with you, man. He's
going to go to somebody like the Lakers, and everyone's going to be kicking themselves how he fell to a great team, and that he's able to come in and contribute for a championship level team right away. Well, okay, you probably could have had him.
I would love to see him go to a team like Utah, right? Like Utah's got a great record this season. He would be great for Utah because what they're missing is exactly what he is, kind of like a do-it-all, perimeter defender, scorer, playmaker. Like he literally does everything. I think that he would be a hand-in-glove fit in Utah.
Absolutely.
Right on. But Austin, do you have anything else for the guys?
No, I don't have anything else.
All right. So typically what we like to do is when we close the show, Nate and Cole kind of let the people know where they can follow you, some of the things that you kind of have in the works for either yourselves individually, together for the platform, what have you. And we just want to thank you guys so much for giving us an extended cut here on the podcast and letting us pick your brain a little bit. And sincerely, it's not just lip service. You guys have been some real ones. Y'all are true gems, and we've loved having you on the show tonight.
We appreciate the opportunity, Stephen. We thank you for letting us share what we're doing, what we're working on. You can follow us on Twitter at Draft Deeper. That's where we're most active. We have a Facebook page as well. Our podcast is everywhere. It's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. All you got to do is go to draftdeeper.com/podcast, and we got it all right there for you. The website is up. It's definitely going to be expanding. We had 2 test profiles go up on Jalen Johnson as well as Jared Butler. So get a read on those. Any feedback is absolutely welcome. And once the tournament ends, we're going to really start cranking out those profiles, those full profiles on my goal is all 60 guys, because I came into this, I wanted to not do just like a short little 3-line profile on somebody that was a second-round pick. If I'm writing about you, you're going to get as much treatment as a guy who could be a top 5 pick.
So I love that.
That's the kind of content we're going to be cranking out of Draft Deeper. And follow the podcast. We've been on fire with some guests lately. We had Coach David Thorpe on from True Hoop. We had Rafael Barlow on from NBA Draft Junkies last week. Cool. And we're hoping to have everyone's favorite Mavs draft on this upcoming week.
Oh, so there you go.
We're trying. So subscribe to the show. Thank you guys for the support, everyone, especially you guys. You guys for wanting to have us on and talk to us. It means a lot. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, thanks again, Stephen and Austin. It's been great putting faces to you guys' names and chatting basketball. All 4 of us has been a lovely time, and I hope we get to do it again in the future. As Nate said, you can find us at Draft Deeper and give these guys a follow as well. Everybody's doing good work here, and we hope to keep doing it.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And if for no other reason to follow these guys, Cole, I'm not trying to like put you on the spot or anything like that. Cole, you kind of have like a Keanu Reeves vibe about you. I'm sure that you've heard that. I'm sure you've heard that before, but I can't. Really? Like, Austin, please tell me you see it.
You kind of.
I see it.
You have a Peyton Pritchard freshman year vibe to you, honestly. It's the first thing I noticed about you.
Well, hey, I'll take that. So
he's a winner. Peyton Pritchard's a winner.
Exactly.
He is.
Appreciate it. So we've had Peyton Pritchard and Keanu Reeves on this show tonight. So shout out to them. But
big show.
Yeah, no big deal. Whatever. It's just what we do here at Breaking the Game. But Nate, Cole, again, thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll close out for tonight. We're definitely got to have you guys come back on again, probably when the draft stuff starts kicking up and y'all aren't so busy pumping out these, 5-page profiles on, the 58th pick in this upcoming draft. So with that being said, thank you guys so much. Austin, as always, man, you're the best co-host a guy could ever ask for, man. Appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I thank you guys for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. It's been fun to kind of, like Steven said, pick your brains and see where I am in terms of how I feel about some guys. So it was definitely a lot of fun. We appreciated having you on for sure.
All right, guys. Well, we'll close out. Thank you guys so much.